I'll call this meeting of the Solid Waste Task Force back to order. Thank you all for joining us again. I'm going to start by just mentioning some tentative dates that we have discussed for future meetings so that each of you might pencil those in on your calendars. The first that we've talked about is January 26th of 2026. We are considering working one more meeting in before the end of the year, but obviously schedules get really hectic, and so the chairman are discussing that to see if there might be a way to continue this movement and continue gathering information. The next date we've talked about is April 20th, then July 20th, and October 19th, all of 26. So we will continue to tweak those dates and let each of you know with as much notice as we possibly can, because I know how important that is. So I'll recognize Chairman Reeves to go over some strategy discussion at this point.
Thank you, Chairman Todd, and thank you to his points on that schedule. We want to have as much participation as we possibly can, so I think we all need to just work together to find dates that work for everybody. But after that Puckett's meal, just that banana pudding that got me over the top there. So when I was in my early 30s, coming along as a young businessman and burning the candle at both ends in my life, I got exposed to a professional development program called the Strategic Coach Program, which was out of Chicago at the time. At the time, I was working 7 days a week, and I was just going so incredibly hard. And the promise of that program at the time was, okay, we're going to teach you how to better manage your time. So I still use their time system to this day. We're going to help you really get a better understanding of what your giftedness is, your unique abilities, and how to use that in the workplace. A third part of it was how to make more money. But the fourth thing they said is we're going to give you a number of tools that you can use in your business moving forward to help better manage your business. So this strategy circle concept that you see up here on the wall is something that I probably have used maybe 100 times in my professional career in businesses and churches and chambers. I've never used it in a government setting before, so it's a little bit of a different concept, but it in of itself, it's pretty self-explanatory. It has 5 parts to it. Obviously, there's a project, which is the project is us coming together talking about all this. Our goal is real simple. We're trying to position Tennessee as a national leader in solid waste management by 2050. How can we be the best in the country by 2050? The start date, the bottom left-hand corner, is today, and the end date is December 31st, 2028. That's really the beginning and the end of how this is going to work out. And then the biggest part of this is identifying obstacles that really will prevent us from being this market leader by 2050 and there are no bad answers today, by the way. There's no bad answers. If you think if there's an obstacle you've got in your mind that's going to prevent us from hitting that goal, let's talk about it. Let's get it down on piece of paper. But the hope is these obstacles will give us some could end up being kind of the raw ingredients where we can create a roadmap moving forward to fix things. And I also think these obstacles today will help Chairman Todd and I hone in on what our agenda needs to look like next year. What are the big things we need to focus on moving forward? We're just going to talk obstacles today. I know there's probably lots of solutions in this room. As a matter of fact, I know there are lots of solutions around this table here. But we're going to really try to focus on what are the major obstacles that are preventing Tennessee from being the best in the country in regards to solid waste. So I'm going to kick it off today. And what I'd love to do is talk about it, mention an obstacle, and then just get some feedback and some color around an obstacle. So I think one clear obstacle that seems to be at the top of the page that's going to prevent Tennessee from being this market leader nationwide is landfill capacity and site opposition, which is Tennessee's existing landfills are filling faster than expected and new sites face stronger local opposition. I think I've heard 10 people today say not in my backyard. So to me, that is a huge obstacle. We have capacity issues, and not only have capacity issues, we've got major issues with people wanting to have new sites. So I think everybody would agree that's an obstacle, but I'd love to kind of talk through that just a little bit and see if there's any reasons why is that an obstacle. Why don't you What are your thoughts on that? Yes, sir. I'll call you out. Why is that an obstacle?
That's a good question. And I mean, not in my backyard is nothing new. And I understand that sentiment, right? Like, I mean, if I had an option to go live by a landfill or some sort of industrial thing, I'm probably going to try to avoid that. But we have to have an option for managing our waste. It's got to go somewhere. And, you know, I think locals obviously deserve a role at the table to weigh in on whether it's landfill or some other infrastructure. But I think the existing layout of it is pretty complicated and confusing. It's confusing for me. So I think how that's set up currently is certainly an obstacle.
Okay, it's good. So again, the question is, why is there so much pushback in Tennessee over trying to expand landfills and expand our sites? Yes, do your microphone.
Rightfully so in the communities, and as industry has changed over our lives, there are other options that our community wants us to see and take advantage of. Again, whether it's the recycling, which we are not capitalizing on, whether it is diversion, waste to energy, true waste to energy, not something that just creates something else and ends up 4 steps later in another landfill. But I think that is part of what contributes to the capacity, is the lack of not looking at other things, and the pushback from the locals is we don't want that anymore. That needs to be the choice of last position, not first position, and it's been first position all along.
So political willpower. There's just not the political willpower to do some of this. Okay, what else? Yes, sir.
Well, I agree that there ought to be some solutions as far as waste reduction and sustainability. But I think that we'll always have a need for landfills. I don't think we're going to totally eliminate landfills. As a matter of fact, I still think a significant portion of our waste will be going to landfills. And so I think that we do need to solve the problem of how hard it is to license and expand existing landfills or new landfills. And I think the process is not efficient. It leads itself to political influences that probably shouldn't make the decision. And so I think that there should be an effort to look at that process and make it more objective, more pertinent towards meeting our landfilling needs. I concede that landfill shouldn't be the only solution or even the number one solution, but it's going to be part of the solution of managing our waste for some time.
So the obstacle I'm hearing you say is it's just the process is too hard for the private sector and the public sector. The process to jump through the hoops
Right.
necessarily to meet the regulations is too expensive. We need to make that simpler.
Yeah, it needs to be simpler, more objective. Obviously, TDEC looks at it from, is this an environmentally safe option to undertake at the designated or proposed location? And there's certainly issues that the community has a right to look at in terms of, is that a good place for a landfill? But my experience with the process is that it's too complicated and it's too prone to being susceptible to the not my backyard type mentality, and sites get dismissed too easily on that process because nobody wants it in their backyard. It's got to be, those landfills have to be somewhere. And so there's got to be a more objective approach to siting landfills.
Okay. So let's keep building on this. Obstacles, landfill capacity is an issue. Picking sites is an issue as far as obstacles to meet this goal. Why? Anything else you want to fit in on that? Yes, sir.
It seems like there's a lack of incentives or investment in the recycling space. I mean, I think if we're 48th in the country when it comes to that, then there's I don't know all the answers to that, but there's certainly a reason that we're in that position. So understanding that space as well as an obstacle.
Yes, sir.
Along those lines, I would say, lack of robust alternatives, right? The recycling market infrastructure, if we have it there, the markets are better, the infrastructure is better, or other alternatives, not even just recycling, is there, and it's economical, then it presents a viable option to what we currently do.
Anything else on this one? I mean, the bottom line is without a long-term plan, we truly run the risk of just running out of a disposable capacity. We just going to run out of runway at some point in time. Did you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to add a little, we talk about the NIMBYs and part of the never-ending circle that we found ourselves in is not in my backyard, but then we jokingly in the industry say that, there's the NIMBYs and the notes. It's the NIMBYs and then not over there either. And it's just a never-ending circle that we have found ourselves in, and we can't seem to move past out of that circle.
I mean, one of you mentioned kind of the political not in my back door, but I think he would agree. It's a political appetite in this building too. And there's not probably a lot of political willpower in this building either to really maybe make some big changes. And he and I would struggle with that as hard as we could try. Anything else on this? Yes, ma'am.
One more thing we need to think about, when you look at the map that showed where all of the landfills currently are that are active, how many of those counties did not have one in it? I can speak on behalf of my residents in Rutherford County. We do understand that the landfill is a portion of this formula. Absolutely, it's going to have to be, because not everything can be recycled, reused, diverted. So it is part of the formula. Right now, it's been the only formula. But that aside, when the landfill in your backyard is not just your landfill, but 27 other counties and 6 other states, that's an obstacle to overcome. It's not a matter of not in our backyard. Not everybody's trash in our backyard. So when we look at this and we look at statute, you realize that, and I believe that the chairman said this before I arrived, every county has an obligation to manage or provide that service. Many have just co-opted that to let another county help them provide that service. So that has to be looked at for some of those that are bearing the brunt of everybody's solid waste coming into their area.
That's good. What else on this one obstacle? Yes, sir.
Thank you. One of the things implicit in what we are talking about is, yes, it's the not in my backyard issue that we have to deal with. Yes, those in elected position, in my opinion, have to have the fortitude to move forward and make the tough decisions around this. But I think it all begins with something as simple as education. And I use as an example, one of the issues that's going on in the Memphis community right now is discussion around building a new prison. And we had 40 plus, if not more, acres of the old Firestone plant. And before anyone heard anything about what this could do for that area, the thought of a prison in my backyard just ran rampant. And then we had the elected officials running away, passing resolutions that this site will not be there, which implicit they in the community are saying they would rather have a dilapidated building that's been closed for a number of years set in the heart of their community as opposed to a vibrant alternative to it. So the same holds true with solid waste. There are a lot of stigmas associated with solid waste. And I think if we're going to begin to turn the tide on public perception, somewhere in our plan, there needs to be some component of broader education to the public about what a landfill is and what it's not, because for most people, when you talk about a landfill, it conjures up a myriad of negative images, but technology has advanced to a point that how are we capitalizing on the technological changes that will allay some of those fears that you and I and others might have had about landfills as we move forward in putting together a strategic plan to address this issue on a go-forth basis.
Good, excellent comments. I mean, that's clearly adds into this obstacles that the public just doesn't fully understand it. They just don't. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
I think there's an element of personal responsibility here. So when people say not in my backyard, they're still producing waste in the services they use and in their personal home, which means if we don't have a viable option for it, you're basically saying I'm okay with it being in somebody else's backyard. So I'm generating waste, but I don't want to deal with the consequences of that.
It's good. Any other comments around this particular obstacle? Yes, ma'am.
I'll just elaborate with, I agree, education is a big part of it. And, you know, what we're looking at is where we're going to be in 2050. And education is a big part of that. I shared with Misty, you know, before lunch that I'll just share with all of you that I'm very involved with the Friends of Henry Horton State Park, and we do a Duck River Watershed Education Program for all the fifth graders in Marshall County and all the fifth graders in Spring Hill with a partnership with GM. And what we do is we set up 10 stations and we have a different education, and we teach them about turbidity, pH, the history of Henry Horton, the importance of the Duck River. But one of the stations is about recycling. How do you recycle? Where do you recycle? What do you do? What do you not do? And then we ask those fifth graders to go back and we ask them to write an essay on what they learned today. And it is so heartwarming that they will come back, and a lot of them will really focus in on recycling, and they need to do it because they're going to be the adults in 2050. And we've got to get them to do it, and they'll go home and get their parents to do it. So that is a big part of it also.
That's good. One other thing I thought about today is if we're shooting toward 2050, I think it's very important that whatever we're coming up with, recognizing these obstacles, that it is aligned with whatever you're doing for 2035. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to reinvent the wheel. We need to fold all that into all of our discussions moving forward. Chairman Todd, do you want to make a comment?
A couple of things. First, to Mr. Duckett's point, just one of the latest issues we had in West Tennessee was over chicken barns. With an increase in chicken processing plants, we had to have farmers growing those chickens. And I'll never forget a conversation. I had a very cordial conversation with a constituent in a particular area where there was a barn supposed to be going up like right next door to their house. And she was very adamant. It's going to be the worst thing that ever happened to them. And I met with them, talked with them, showed them everything my history with those when I was a regulator with TDEC many moons ago, and all of that. And again, very polite and cordial. And then probably 2 or 3 years after that meeting and that chicken barn being established, she reached out to me and said, you know something, you were right. Some of the nicest people we've ever had as neighbors. They've been very helpful, and we hardly notice they're there. So they had a perception based on some hype that was brought in from somewhere else that was wrong. And so sometimes that education, it goes a long way. And sometimes you just, at the end of the day, you just have to show them. Unfortunately, they might not see it without actually experiencing it. So the other thing I wanted to mention is we want this to be an open dialogue with our community and stakeholders. So the folks that are visiting here are welcome. We're going to have a time toward the end of this period where you can come up to the microphone and share your thoughts, your questions, your concerns or ideas for a few minutes. We'll give each person maybe 3 minutes. And I'd like to do that every time if the task force is agreeable to that. I think it's really good to have as much participation as we can. So want to be open and transparent, but also let folks participate in that environment. So let's move on with another strategy.
That's good. All right, so I think we all agree, if we're going to lead the nation by 2050 on solid waste management, we all agree a major obstacle is we got landfill capacity issues and we got problems with nobody wants to expand the new sites. What is a second obstacle that is going to prevent us from hitting our goal? Who wants it? You did your homework. Somebody give me an obstacle. Yes, sir.
I'll mention recycling in general.
Okay.
I think there's three issues. We've talked about education, and that's certainly one prong. And I know from experience from my children and my grandchildren that they're much more aware of the need to recycle and being trying to meet sustainability and stuff. I mean, in the products that they buy and what they do with the containers that they dispose of or recycle. So I think we can have more education, but that's helpful. I think there's two challenges to recycling as a matter of reducing the stuff that goes to landfills. One's logistical, just the process of how do we do it? How do you separate it? How do you get it to recycling facilities? Those are challenges. And then there's the economic one, which is really the big nut. From what I understand, and I am not an expert on it, but it is expensive to recycle. There's been attempts to recycle various different types of products, and they have financially failed. And so one of our challenges is to figure out how to encourage recycling in a manner which we can afford, and we can figure out the structure to make it effective.
So I'm just going to call that recycling market buy-in. And we have logistics and access issues. And there's also just the economics if it's just too expensive. Any other thoughts on why this is an obstacle for us? Why we're struggling to make this happen in Tennessee? Yes, ma'am.
Economics, obviously. I mean, you look around at the cities across the state of Tennessee and how many offer curbside recycling. If you get down to it, there's not a lot. So you've got to establish the curbside recycling. You've got to then pick it up. You got to hope it's not contaminated. And then you have to have a facility to take it to be processed. So, I'm going to use an example. We're lucky in Marshall County that we received a hub and spoke grant many years ago where we have a recycling facility. So we do curbside recycling in Lewisburg and Chapel Hill. They're rural areas. That's not the norm across the state of Tennessee. So you've got to have that availability to not only have the metro areas, the larger cities, but you've got to be able to reach out to the to the rural areas also. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think for me, the economics is a huge part of that. Is there a way, and this is part of what I want to learn here, are there ways where these waste streams can be profitable or at least break even?
Mhm.
So that's really what I'm looking for. And I'm hoping we have input that can show that. I really do. That's just one of my goals. I don't know how realistic it is. I hope it's very realistic.
I think that if there are ways that businesses and organizations can recycle and make money off of it, I think it changes the game. It really does. You got thoughts on recycling?
Not that already been said.
Never been said. Anything else? Yes, sir.
I think what I'm about to say is for recycling and anything else as part of this topic, but if we can get more partnership among the local governments and private companies, like the 91 Act promoted, that regionalization, I'm sure there's some downfalls to that I don't understand, but it seems like there's some potential to improve economy of scale, other things, access through that. So if we could at least look into that and promote it more. You saw that map, there was 61 counties that participated as single counties. That's probably not a successful model to improve recycling. So trying to get those folks to work together more.
What else is keeping us from having buy-in on recycling? Anything else come out on this? Anything else you want to say on recycling? No. Okay. Additional obstacles that are going to prevent us from being the best in the country in regards to managing waste by 2050. Okay. You got one?
I do.
All right, what you got?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to say logistics as a whole. So as we talk about, I mean, I know we looked at the map of where the class ones are located. Middle Tennessee is going to get to a point where we're going to create a splash as one landfill closes, moving to the next landfill and the next landfill. And then it's our interstates, our road systems able to handle that amount of trash going long distance? If that doesn't work, do we have a rail system in place to ship it even longer distance to get it to landfills that will accept it? I think right now those answers are probably no. Her and I were talking about just coming into Nashville this morning, and it took 2 hours for me to get from Lewisburg to Nashville that normally takes an hour without traffic. So every hour that truck's on the road, that's so much per ton you've got to allocate to that. And then we're not building any rail spurs to be able to move this stuff by rail. I think landfill is going to be a piece. Managing a recovery facility for recycling, 20 to 25% of that still has to go to a landfill somewhere. So we still have to have that infrastructure to move that waste wherever it needs to go. If we can't permit more landfills in Middle Tennessee or wherever, obviously that's the one that shows the most need immediately now, but the rest will get there. We've got to figure out a way to move that material where it needs to go.
So I'm going to say, so your obstacle is logistically getting the trash to facilities.
Correct.
Either Memphis and Nashville are very different than our small rural counties as well. So I think that's a good one. You got feedback on that? No? Later? Okay, you agree it's an obstacle though? Okay,
If I may.
sure you can.
Everything that I'm hearing is something I've heard in various meetings for years. Task force we've done, community meetings, think tanks. So I don't think we're bringing anything new to the table. What I hope we're going to do is bring a different box, because the boxes we've been working within aren't working, and the answers are there. We've got to break out of the box. We've got to break out of the interpretation we've had of this code for 50 years. It was a good intention. It moved us a long way from open burn pits to convenience centers and landfills, but now it's time for something else. And I think we just got a little behind with the new fires that started burning. And we've got a good sound structure here. We've just got to get out of the box that we're in. And I keep hearing landfill over and over and over again, or transporting the trash to another landfill. Please don't let that be the only topic we have on the table here, because that can't be the next new box. But I'm confident with everything that I'm just now beginning to hear, that some of the other research I've done will be well received and added to by this body as we get on to further meetings.
Very good. So I think not a whole lot to add to that. I mean, we understand we have logistics issues. We got to find a way to get it to these facilities, whether they're landfills, whether they're recycling, whether they're composting. You got to find a way to get your trash there, whether you're residential or commercial. What are some other obstacles that are going to prevent us from leading the nation in 2050?
I think in some respects, to his point about the 61 counties, I think there's a lot of silos and people kind of not really coordinating. And I know some of that may be solved by what TDEC's doing with their strategic plan and others, but it just seems like there's a whole lot of silos and people operating in those silos. And I think if maybe that's part of what we work on here, but if there's a way to coalesce everyone around a strategic plan, one strategic plan, and work towards that, I think that's clearly an obstacle when you've got a lot of regional boards, a lot of counties that do their own thing. So, yeah.
No question. I picked up on that today too. Just silos, regional disparities, the structures we have in place, do they really work for the future? But you want to build a structure of the future based on what our solutions are going to be as well, what that looks like. Any other thoughts on our current silos, regional disparities, why that's an obstacle? Yes.
Well, I mean, when I did my homework. So, part of what I listed out were development districts.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things, we've had a lot of conversations around because over the years, the development districts would have a person to work with the solid waste directors. Then that went away. Now that's back. TDEC was doing it. TDEC was not. So I think we need to figure out we need to streamline this. What are we going to do? Because we need to make it where everybody's working together. And if the development district is that part of that, where it's a shared across the entire state of Tennessee, instead of a piece here, a piece there, that. But I just outlined development districts as an obstacle because it's not being utilized to help at this point in time. And the intention was to utilize the development districts. So I think we need to look at how it's been utilized, how it's not been utilized, and take a look at that big picture.
It's good. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think that the structure was well intended back when it was created and has worked in a few instances where there are multi regions for the regions, not the development districts. But it seems to me that there's not a big incentive for 61 counties to align themselves with another county. So maybe the issue is, are there incentives that can encourage the counties to work together? Incentives that we can come up with that will make them form, come together and not be siloed. I don't know what those incentives are, but I think that that's something we might want to look at and see why do they silo and what can we do to make them work together? Because I don't think 61 counties are going to be able to solve their solid waste needs independently of each other. I think they're going to have to work together to use regional recycling centers, regional landfills, regional processing, all of those things. And so I think that we need to figure out how to get those counties to work together on this.
Agreed. Anything else on this one here? Silos, regional disparities. I like the incentive thoughts. All right. Other obstacles to prevent us from leading the nation by 2050. Anything else that you feel like are topics that we need to really dig into? Yes, sir.
I would say inconsistency. So I work for a local county, and each county has its own funding mechanism about how it funds its department, which dictates, and I understand that there's differences between rural and urban, but how they get their funding allows what they can and cannot do.
Inconsistency in what? Help me.
The programs they offer.
Every county
is to a point siloed. I mean, it's kind of going back to the other one a little, but how they handle those problems is very different from county to county. Some counties don't have recycling programs at all. Some counties and municipalities have very robust programs, and a lot of that depends on funding and what's available to them, and they're working with the tools that they have. But in order for us to be a leader, we're going to have to be consistent, and we're very inconsistent in what we offer currently.
So inconsistency in how counties manage waste with funding, but I mean, rural counties probably lack the tax base
Absolutely.
to fund some of this.
Absolutely. So I don't know if that's something that we can consider. I mean, I know that the way TDOT structures, they have a gas tax. That tax is not evenly spread. It's not based on use. I mean, it is to some extent, but we still build rural roads on TDOT, even though most of the traffic is in urban areas. So it's not a completely even distribution of that tax where it's collected. For my county, we do a property tax. So I get a portion of that property tax, which means the more expensive home you own, the more you're paying for my solid waste budget, versus if you live in a less expensive home, you're getting the same service, but you're paying a different amount for it. I know a lot of counties that just have a flat fee for everybody. So there's a lot of difference in how that's managed. And I think a little more consistency might help us out.
Okay, anything else on that one? That's good. All right, any other, it's 5 or 6 good topics here. Any other big obstacles that are going to prevent us from leading the nation by 2050? Yes, ma'am.
Jeremy, please don't be offended. So, but I think, we've got to get TDEC to work with us. Like, I know we discussed like the 10-year plans, and there's like, TDEC really has not reviewed those plans. Are they accurate? Do they offer a mechanism to solve problems? Currently, all they do is a check mark. So, I think TDEC is an obstacle here that we've got to work on many different areas to come together, that we're all working on the same page and for the same goals. And I know TDEC's working on the 2025, 2035 plan. I think that's an important role also, but we've got to make sure that we go beyond that, and it's not just got it, received it, and then nobody ever looked at it and read it to say, yes, where your county is, this is a good plan for your county.
So TDEC is kind of rubber stamping plans, not stepping on your toes, but I kind of heard that a little bit, and we need to have a little bit more teeth there. I'd love to know, best practices in the country between similar TDEC organizations and the solid waste communities. What does that look like? Best practices. It's a good one. Anything else on that? Yes, ma'am.
I hear what Stacy's saying about the plans that go up, but that works in reverse also. The plan that TDEC brings down, I'm not sure all the stakeholders that need to have input have had input. I can guarantee you my county who approves our plans probably barely know that there's a plan that's 95% put together. And that plan is supposed to dictate our plan, or our plan is supposed to match that plan. So I think earlier on it was mentioned the possibility of bringing, if nothing else, at least a summary of that current draft to this board. I'd like to see more than just a summary, because I know it's going to be, if I remember correctly from the prior 10-year plans, that's a pretty lengthy document. And it sets the tone. Whether it's followed or not, you set the tone for us, and we're supposed to set the tone for you. So everybody's all mixed up in what their plans are supposed to do and who dictates what and who's responsible for what. And it's very convoluted. So for as much as they need to look up or look down, we need to look up as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Just to add on to what Donna said, you're 100% correct. And just, I know from the current 10-year plan that TDEC has, there was absolutely no rules promulgated from that plan. Zero.
That plan was never accepted by the General Assembly.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just a plan. It's never been accepted as the
Oh, I
official
know.
plan.
There was nothing came from it. It was just a bunch of paper.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah, I think this conversation's great and it's constructive. And it's illustrative of the issue about helping improve the process. Because I think the plan, the TDEC plan, and then the regional plans that are supposed to come back up, they don't have the checks and balances, so to speak, that we need, because they end up being the basis of the reason why a landfill is not permitted. And so you need to make sure that the plan is sound before those decisions are based on those things. And I'm not saying that some of them aren't. I'm sure some of the regional boards do their best, but I don't think there's been an education or ingrain into the like I said, the checks and balances, making sure that your plan has enough information for the regional boards to understand what they're supposed to decide on and look at and study, and then based on that information, make decisions about what their solid waste needs are and how they're going to meet them. And so if all of that's built on sand, it's a weak foundation to be making important decisions based on those things. So.
Yes, sir.
Just real quick, a question. So I wasn't here when we did the 2015, 2025 plan, which is the previous plan. Is that supposed to be approved by the General Assembly?
Let's see. If I
Yes,
can-
yes, yes.
So my understanding has always been that like the UST Solid Waste Board could take pieces or parts of that plan and promulgate a rule, from what's in the plan. So, and could be approved by the board and go through the standard, put it out for public comment, go through the comment period, et cetera. So, but nothing ever, there were no pieces or parts of that ever occurred.
I'm not sure. I don't want to give the misinterpretation that it doesn't have to be approved by the General Assembly, though, because this is a statewide plan. It's not something that just goes to a board and the board promulgates it based on a paper written by a department. That's not how we operate, how the General Assembly used to operate, I'm assuming under the same rules. So if there's a statewide plan, that should be accepted by the General Assembly.
I look at it almost like the statewide plan we just rolled out for infrastructure on roads. We passed, was it $3 billion one time last year and $1 billion this year? It was a statewide solution to address roads. Yes, ma'am.
Nothing happened with that plan. Bottom line, nothing happened with
Okay.
that plan. So either way.
All right. Okay. Any other obstacles that we need to put out there that are going to prevent? That's a lot to talk about, group, right here. Anything else you want to share? So a little bit of a recap of what I've got here, and I think this is going to take a lot of energy and time as we start thinking through this. And I know Hannah's taking some notes as well. But some of the obstacles are going to prevent us to be this market leader nationwide by 2050. Number one obstacle is we have landfill capacity issues and an unwillingness to expand our sites. And there's a whole lot that came under that, by the way. Second obstacle we have is it was recycling buy-in, but I just think there's a lack of buy-in for composting, incinerating, lack of buy-in for anything, really, it sounds except for landfills. Another obstacle is logistics. We just don't have a good plan to get trash from these areas to facilities. A fourth thing is our counties are just too siloed. There's not enough regionalism. Maybe some of our existing boards and structures are a little bit need to be rethought, outdated. Fifth thing is there's just an inconsistency. This ties back to the siloed piece. There's just an inconsistency on just how counties manage waste. There is no Tennessee way. There's not a way that everybody needs to do it, and there's not funding to support these smaller counties. And then another one that mentions that TDEC needs to probably get a little more involved and not just rubber stamp things. And I think a larger overarching theme that I heard over and over again is we've got funding issues and economic issues. There's clearly public awareness problems in education. People just don't understand it. They just don't want it in their backyard. Third thing is it's such a political issue inside these halls and outside, and there's legislative barriers. And then something that we really did not talk about today, which at some point in time I would love for us to kick around, and you probably know more about than I do, is just all the new technologies that are being looked at that are probably incredibly expensive, like the waste to energy products that are out there. I don't think that's an obstacle, but I do think at some point in time as a committee, if we're looking at 2050 and beyond, I think we need to be open-minded to anything and everything that's out there. Okay. What else do you want to add to all this? That's a lot to think about.
I think at this time, we can open it up for the public. If anybody wants to approach the podium and share anything with us, we'd be glad to hear from you. Just come up there and hit the little red, well, if it'll light up red when you punch the button and state your name, who you're with, and have 3
Hello.
minutes.
I'm shivering. I know what they do here so that y'all stay awake because I'm shaking. I'm so cold. My name's Maris Macelis, and I am here representing the Tennessee Environmental Council. On behalf of my CEO, Jeffrey Berry, I'm here, and I just want to say thank you so much, Senator Chairman Reeves, for putting this task force together. Such a great, diverse group of people here that have a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge, and just really hopeful that we're really gonna solve some problems here. We're gonna get this figured out. And I really appreciate what Mrs. Barrett has said about the current processes that need to change, how communities want something new, right? Getting out of the box that we're in. I couldn't agree with her more about that, because this aligns not only with my personal views, but with TEC's vision for a circular economy. We really need to figure out ways to sustainably fund this recycling and the waste diversion and get these materials back into the economy. And there is a piece of legislation that has been floating around. I'm sure some of you have heard about it. It's called the Tennessee Waste to Jobs Act. And, you know, it would provide the sustainable funding by sharing the responsibility with industry, and it creates thousands of jobs and revenue for Tennessee. But, you know, one thing that it does that I have not heard any other solution do or try is it actually incentivizes industry to make more sustainable design. And that is huge, because if we're going to kick the can down the road and we're going to just keep taking all these materials in and trying to figure out ways to bury it or to recycle it, but we're not incentivizing industry to do better, then we're just going to run into the same problem over and over again. And so what this bill could do, or at least this idea of sharing the responsible with industry, is it would get these materials back to the economy. We want to see the plastic, aluminum, and the glass get back into the industry. And industry hasn't been really held accountable for this at all at this point. So I know that this is a new idea. I know that there's more to it. And I'm just really, we're really hopeful that this task force will seriously consider this legislation and this idea, because it's not the key, but it is a huge part, a piece of this puzzle. It is a huge part. And yeah, if we want to take Tennessee to 48th to top 3 and be a leader in the nation by 2050, as Chairman Reeves has said, this is the funding mechanism is there. The money is there. I know that Tennessee can be a leader in this. It may not look so pretty in the front end. We may have to try some things. Yet I really believe that it's part of the puzzle. And so we're hoping that we can hear more conversations about this, and how it can maybe work hand in hand with some of these other solutions and ideas. Because, you know, at Tennessee Environmental Council, we know that landfills they're part of the puzzle too, right? The diversion is part of the puzzle. The recycling is part of the puzzle. The education is so important, and we need funding for that. We need it. So instead of local government or state government being responsible to figure this out, we can take some of the pressure off of government. We can take the pressure off of community. I myself, as just a resident of Tennessee, I've lived here for 12 years on my own. I've created podcasts, content. I have been so invested and passionate about waste diversion, because I know when I throw something away that it goes somewhere. And I also have educated myself to know that recycling is a business. And if we don't have the product to sell to these industries that are right here in Tennessee, which Tennessee Waste to Jobs has made this amazing video on our website. If you go to tnwastetojobs.com, you can watch an incredible short documentary that was produced to show that industry and how much they want and need this material. So that being said, I'd love to hear more. I really appreciate your comments today, Mrs. Barrett. I think it's so important that we're looking for new solutions. And I'm so grateful for this task force. TEC is very grateful for this task force.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Anyone else? Microphone's hot and ready.
Good to go. Wasn't
sir.
expecting to speak here today, but Thank you for having this committee. I'm Joe Trotter, the Executive Director of Americans for Clean Water. A couple of years ago, I was working for a nonprofit up in DC called the American Legislative Exchange Council. And one of my members sent me on a very interesting trip to Germany and Lithuania to take a look at how they manage recycling. Europe in general doesn't have landfills. They don't have the space for it. They've got a huge population and they do actually need to reuse the vast majority of their waste there. And what they did was institute a deposit return system, not a tax. You put a deposit when you get a can or a bottle, and you get that money back when you return it. And it led to an incredibly powerful solid waste stream that could be reused without as much, waste in the system. And with their lack of landfills, everything that wasn't able to be used or contaminated wound up getting incinerated for electricity. One of the things that America has had an advantage of is we've had a ton of land and a relatively low population density. And in places like Tennessee, which is exploding in population, we're seeing that dynamic shift. So I just want to thank you for having this and look forward to engaging more.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Cynthia Willett, and I live in Rutherford County. Also, I do want to thank you for all of the ideas and all of the willingness to look at multiple ways of and looking at the issue from multiple directions, because we can't do this single-handedly or single-sidedly. One thing that another piece to me is getting our local planning commissions involved, so that when our communities are having new multi-unit housing that has one central trash location, they need to also have in the same area a central recycling location to make it easier for those residents. In conjunction with curbside recycling would be where you have curbside trash pickup, you have curbside recycling pickup. And of course, multiple ways of diversion. And I thank you all for your service.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? We appreciate all of you being here and participating, and look forward to more participation in the future and subsequent meetings. Chairman Reeves, any closing remarks?
No, I think it's been a good day's work. Good start, good conversation. I think we've left with some pretty good plans moving forward. We've got a lot to do here, but I am excited about our collective future, and we may look back on this day as a day that something really special happened in Tennessee with this group. So look forward to being part of it with all of you. So thanks for being here.
I thank all of you for participating in this. I mean, when you were asked, I'm sure you had to think through how much time am I going to have to invest in this, and where's it going to be, and when, and all of that, the normal logistical things. And so appreciate you stepping out on a limb and being willing to do that. So we look forward to staying in touch with you. If we do set another meeting time between now and the end of the year, we'll certainly give you as much notice as possible. Chairman Reeves.
But if not, that January 26th is in stone. So if you don't mind putting that one in, January 26th, isn't that right? Isn't that the date?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that one's definitely in stone.
Okay. Any other business before the task force? Seeing none, we will stand adjourned.